I used to work as an overnight security guard, and for years I thought it was the easiest job in the world. Most nights were dead silent, the kind of boring where you fought to stay awake, sipping bad coffee and staring at flickering monitors. But there was one sight in particular that changed the way I thought about night shifts forever. It was an old office complex on the outskirts of town, mostly abandoned except for a handful of rented spaces. During the day, a small insurance company operated on the first floor, and there was a law firm with a corner office that still kept files there. But at night, the building was empty. Completely empty. My job was simple. Sit in the lobby, monitor the CCTV cameras, do a couple of patrol rounds around the building every few hours, and make sure nobody broke in. The pay was decent for what was essentially babysitting a dead space. At least that's what I thought until the night things started happening. It was late January, one of those nights where the temperature drops so low the air feels like it's slicing through your clothes. I clocked in at 11 p.m., grabbed the keys and radio, and settled into the security office, a small room tucked behind the front desk with a wall of monitors showing every angle of the building. The cameras were old, grainy, the kind that made shadows look thicker than they should be. At first, everything was quiet. I walked the first patrol, checked the stairwells, the empty offices, the storage rooms. Everything was locked. Everything was still. By 1:30 a.m., I was back in the chair, yawning, sipping coffee gone lukewarm. That's when I noticed something on one of the cameras. Camera 3, which covered the second-floor hallway, showed movement. At first, I thought it was static, grain fuzzing across the screen. But then I leaned closer. It wasn't static. It was a shape, a figure. Just at the far end of the hall, barely visible in the low light. It stood there, motionless, just out of clear view. My first thought was that it was a reflection, maybe a trick of the camera. But as I stared, the figure shifted. Not walking, not approaching, just tilting, like its head cocked slightly to one side. I grabbed the radio and called out to the only other guard on duty, a guy named Frank who was stationed outside doing perimeter checks. He didn't answer. I felt a cold prickle run down my arms. I switched through the cameras, trying to catch a better angle of the second floor, but by the time I got back to camera 3, the hallway was empty. Nothing there. I told myself it was nothing, maybe just a glitch, but I couldn't shake the image of that figure leaning its head. At 2 a.m., I did the next patrol. I saved the second floor for last, nerves buzzing in my chest as I climbed the stairs. The hallway was exactly as it looked on the monitor, long, dimly lit by a single buzzing fluorescent, lined with closed office doors. I walked slowly, shining my flashlight along the walls, listening. That's when I heard it. A sound that didn't belong. Breathing. Faint, raspy, coming from somewhere ahead of me. I froze, heart hammering, and shined the light down the hall. Nothing. Every door was closed, no movement, no shadow. But the breathing continued, steady, deliberate, as if someone was standing just out of sight. I forced myself forward, checking each door. All locked. The sound grew louder as I neared the end of the hall, until I was standing in front of the supply closet. The breathing was right behind the door. I swallowed hard, hand trembling as I slid the key into the lock. The door swung open, and my light flooded the small room. Empty. Just shelves of paper, boxes, cleaning supplies. The sound had stopped the moment the door opened. My pulse thudded in my ears as I shut the door and backed away, trying not to run. When I got back to the office, I tried calling Frank again. Still no answer. His patrol route should have had him near the loading dock by then, so I switched to camera 6 to check. The screen flickered, then showed the dock, empty. No Frank. I cycled through every camera outside. No sign of him anywhere. I considered going out to look for him, but protocol was to stay in the building if you lost contact. I sat there staring at the monitors, every hair on my neck standing on end. At 2:45, the motion sensor alarm tripped. A sharp beep filled the office, and camera 5 lit up with movement in the basement hallway. I cursed under my breath. Nobody was supposed to be down there. Storage and maintenance only. I watched as the camera showed someone walking slowly down the hall. The image was grainy, but it looked like a man, tall, with shoulders slightly hunched. He moved unnaturally, like each step dragged, like his legs didn't quite work right. I leaned closer, squinting at the screen, and felt ice spread through my chest when he turned his head toward the camera. His face was pale, almost featureless in the static, like the lens couldn't capture it clearly. I jumped up, ready to head down there, when suddenly the figure vanished mid-step. One frame he was there, the next, he was gone. The alarm cut off, leaving me in silence again. I backed into my chair, staring at the screen, unable to process what I'd just seen. That's when I heard the stairwell door slam shut. The sound echoed through the building, loud and sharp. I grabbed my flashlight and crept into the hall, my shoes squeaking against the tile. The stairwell door was closed, but the metal push bar still vibrated faintly, like it had just been hit. I pushed it open slowly, shining my light down the stairwell. Empty. But when I turned to leave, I noticed something on the wall. A handprint, smudged high up on the paint, smeared like someone had pressed their palm hard against it. The print was dark, wet. I leaned closer and realized it wasn't dirt. It was blood. My stomach twisted, and I stumbled back, nearly dropping the light. I radioed again for Frank, my voice cracking now, panic seeping through. No answer. I checked the cameras again, but this time half of them were nothing but static. The screens flickered, distorted shapes swimming in the fuzz, like someone, or something, was interfering with them. On camera 2, for a split second, I swore I saw Frank. He was standing in the lobby, his back to the camera. But when I blinked, the image shifted, and the lobby was empty. The clock ticked past 3 a.m., and every minute felt heavier, harder to breathe. I locked myself in the office, back against the wall, flashlight in one hand, radio in the other. The monitors buzzed faintly, static crawling across the screens. That's when the phone on the desk rang. I nearly dropped the flashlight. Nobody called that phone. It wasn't even connected to an outside line, just for internal use. My hand shook as I picked it up, pressing it to my ear. At first there was nothing, just static, faint crackling like wind through dead leaves. Then, a whisper. Slow, drawn out. My name. I slammed the phone down so hard the plastic cracked. My chest heaved as I stumbled back, my mind screaming to get out, to leave, but my body frozen in place. Minutes crawled by, each second stretching. Then, from the hallway outside the office, came the sound of footsteps again. Slow, heavy, approaching the door. I held my breath, light trained on the doorway. The footsteps stopped just outside. The handle rattled once, twice, then silence. I stood there for what felt like an hour, but the clock said only 5 minutes had passed. When I finally worked up the courage to move, I checked the hallway. Empty. No sign of anyone. But on the floor, right outside the door, was a single footprint. Bare, wet, smeared. Not Frank's. Not anyone's I recognized. I finished that shift somehow, though I barely remember how I got through the last hours. When morning came, the relief guard found me pale and shaking, sitting in the office with the flashlight still on. They asked where Frank was. I didn't have an answer. The police were called. They searched the building, the grounds, the surrounding area. They never found him. No trace. To this day, Frank is considered missing, and I haven't worked a night shift since. People always say being a security guard is easy. You sit around, watch cameras, and collect a paycheck. But I can tell you this, some buildings don't sleep. Some places don't stay empty. And if you ever take a job like mine, be careful when the monitors start to flicker. Because sometimes, the things you're supposed to be guarding against aren't on the outside trying to get in. Sometimes, they're already there. I worked as a night security guard for a warehouse complex on the edge of town. And though I'd worked plenty of boring shifts in my life, nothing compared to what happened in that building. It's still hard to talk about, but when I think back to that time, I realize that not every empty place is truly empty. Some of them breathe when no one's supposed to be there. The warehouse was massive, 3 connected buildings filled with crates, forklifts, and endless aisles of shelving. My job was to watch the front gate, monitor the cameras, and do scheduled patrols through each section. The place was so big that it could take over an hour just to walk the perimeter. Usually my shift was a fight to stay awake, surviving on vending machine coffee while nothing happened for 8 straight hours. But on one particular night, everything changed. It was a little after midnight, early in my shift, when I first noticed something strange. I was in the security office, a small room with a wall of monitors showing live feeds from every corner of the warehouse. Most of the screens just showed rows of crates sitting in the dark, still and lifeless. But on camera 12, the feed flickered. At first, I thought it was static, maybe a loose connection. But then the picture steadied, and I saw movement. A person, just barely visible at the edge of the frame, standing between 2 shelves. I froze, leaning closer. Nobody was supposed to be in there. All employees clocked out hours earlier. I radioed to check with the only other guard that night, a guy named Harris who was supposed to be patrolling the parking lot, but he didn't respond. I switched to another camera that covered the same aisle. Nothing there. I went back to camera 12. Empty. I told myself I was seeing things, maybe a shadow shifting, but deep down I knew I hadn't imagined it. My stomach tightened, and I grabbed my flashlight, deciding to check it out. Walking through the warehouse at night is like stepping into a different world. The air feels heavier, the silence crushing. My boots echoed against the concrete floor as I walked past stacks of pallets and forklifts parked in neat lines. Every aisle looked the same. Long stretches of darkness broken only by the faint glow of exit signs. I made my way to the aisle where I'd seen the figure. The shelves towered over me, filled with boxes stacked so high they blocked the ceiling lights. My flashlight beam cut through the shadows, sliding across cardboard and shrink wrap. The aisle was empty. I walked slowly, every step cautious, listening for anything out of place. Halfway down the aisle, I stopped. The air felt colder there, like I'd walked through an invisible curtain. I swept the flashlight back and forth, but there was nothing. Just crates. And then, I heard it. A whisper. Faint, almost too quiet to notice, coming from somewhere above me. I froze, my chest tight, and angled the flashlight upward. The shelves went up nearly 20 feet, stacked with heavy boxes. For a split second, I swore I saw a shape crouched between them, pressed against the steel beams. But before I could focus, the light flickered across empty space. My heart pounded as I backed out of the aisle, forcing myself not to run. I returned to the office, sweat prickling my forehead, even though the heater was off. I checked the cameras again, flipping through each feed. That's when I saw something that made my stomach drop. Camera 7, covering the main loading dock, showed Harris. But something was wrong. He was standing completely still in the middle of the dock, facing away from the camera. He wasn't patrolling, wasn't moving, just standing there like a mannequin. I grabbed the radio again, calling his name, but the only sound that came back was static. I stared at the screen, waiting for him to move. After nearly a full minute, he did, but not normally. His head snapped to the side, unnaturally sharp, like it wasn't connected right. The image glitched, and suddenly the dock was empty. I pushed back from the monitors, my chair scraping against the floor. Every instinct told me to leave, to walk out the gate and never come back. But I forced myself to keep going. I had a job, and maybe Harris was playing a prank. That's what I told myself. At 2:15 a.m., the alarm system beeped, signaling movement in the eastern warehouse. I pulled up the feed. The camera showed one of the aisles near the maintenance room, and standing in the middle of it was a figure. Not Harris. This one was taller, too thin, its arms hanging awkwardly low at its sides. The head was tilted, just like what I thought I saw on the earlier camera. The figure didn't move, didn't shift, didn't do anything except stand there, staring at the lens. I felt my throat tighten. Against every ounce of better judgment, I decided to check. I told myself if it was real, I had to deal with it, and if it wasn't, I needed proof I wasn't losing my mind. I left the office and walked toward the east warehouse. The silence pressed on me heavier with each step, broken only by the sound of my own breathing. When I reached the aisle from the camera feed, it was empty, completely empty. I shined my flashlight across the floor. That's when I saw them. Footprints. Bare, dark smudges against the concrete, leading away from me down the aisle. My stomach turned when I noticed they weren't normal footprints. The toes were long, too long, and the stride was uneven, like whatever left them didn't walk the way a person should. I followed them slowly, every nerve in my body screaming at me to stop. The prints led me to the maintenance room door. It was slightly open, though I knew it had been locked earlier. I pushed it wider, shining the light inside. The room was small, filled with tools, mops, and cleaning supplies. Empty. But the footprints stopped right at the center of the floor. Just stopped, like whoever made them vanished into the air. I backed out of the room, pulse racing, and nearly dropped the flashlight when I heard a noise behind me. A low, dragging sound, like something heavy scraping across concrete. I spun around, but the aisle was empty. The sound continued, echoing faintly through the shelves, coming from everywhere and nowhere at once. I didn't think. I ran back to the office, slamming the door shut behind me. The monitors buzzed with static, half the feeds, cutting in and out. On one of them, camera 4, I saw the front gate. It was wide open. I hadn't opened it. Nobody had. My hands shook as I picked up the phone to call for backup, but the line was dead. Just static hissed in my ear. Then, on camera 12 again, the figure appeared. Closer this time, filling almost the entire frame. Its head tilted further, jerking unnaturally. I leaned back, horrified, as the feed flickered. And then suddenly, it wasn't on the screen anymore. I heard something behind the office door. Breathing. Slow. Heavy. Right outside. The handle rattled. Once, twice, then stopped. I sat frozen in the chair, gripping the flashlight like a weapon, my heart hammering in my chest. Minutes crawled by, the monitors flickering with static. Then, one by one, each camera went dark. The screens all turned black, leaving me staring at my own reflection in the glass. The last thing I heard before the lights went out completely was the whisper of my name, right next to my ear. I don't remember leaving the building. I woke up outside by the gate, the sun just beginning to rise. The warehouse doors locked, as if nothing had happened. Harris was never found. No sign of him anywhere, not in the building, not in the parking lot, nowhere. I quit that job the same day, and I've never worked security again. People think night shifts are just boring hours of silence, but I know the truth. Some places don't want to be guarded. Some places have things inside them that were never meant to be watched. And if you ever take a job as a night security guard, remember this. When the cameras start to flicker, don't look too closely. Because sometimes, what's on the other side is already looking back at you.